Now, whether or not the novel coronavirus ends up inciting an all-out recession, the discerning entrepreneur ought to make sure they are prepared and properly positioned for any impact the contagion might have on their business. Joining us now to speak on the impact on businesses and mitigating circumstances and measures is event planner extraordinaire, the CEO and creative director of Mahogany International, Mr. Sola Oyebade. Good morning, Mr. Oyebade. Thank you for joining us here on the morning show.
Morning.
If we were to start at the crux of your industry that you are in control of, we know that first, almost one of the biggest initial directives from Lagos State, for example, was that they was to advise against public gatherings of more than 50 people, and then it was reduced to 25 people. As someone in the dominating the event space, naturally that would be a huge blow to your business. How have you been surviving in the aftermath?
Well, it's been an enormous impact to the business. I mean, as you know, service industry has become a major mainstay of the Nigerian economy. And immediately, the state and federal governments decided to shut down events, all kinds of social gatherings, meant that our industry came to a complete and utter standstill. I mean, we had to make immediate decisions, very hard decisions, such as laying off all contract workers. Also, we've had to send staff home immediately because there's just absolutely nothing for them to do. A lot of them are going to have to go on unpaid leave, which is going to affect them and affect their families. We don't know how long this will last, and some of us still have offices to run. We still have to maintain those offices and other associated equipment and things that go along with that. So the impact is absolutely is phenomenal, and we had to make these decisions to make sure that there is an industry left after the corona. Because think about it like this, if we continue to pay all of our staff, we continue to have all these running costs and there's no help, and it's unlikely that there's going to be help, we may not have the cash flow to continue after the corona is all over and it's all safe and everybody can go back to work. I also think that one of the other crucial things that we need to think about is that even once this pandemic ends, the industry is not going to pick up immediately, because first you've got to rebook events, you've got to get new dates. Do people have the money to do events? You know, what's going to happen to all the staff that are out there? And it's not just, it's also lounge bars, it's restaurants, and there's a lot of low-income earners that are attached to this industry.
Give us an idea so that we can understand how serious the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak is on your particular sector of the economy, which is the SMEs. Weddings, for example, I know that not too long ago, a deep-pocketed Nigerian actually spent about $6.9 million on their son's wedding. So that just gives you an idea. But tell us, in terms of figures, yes, what your industry could be losing if this goes on for the next 3 months.
Without any exaggeration at all, I mean, the kind of figures that we're looking at when we look at the entire industry and the entire country, we're talking about billions. Some people say billions, but think about it. Our mainstay of entertainment in Nigeria is events, whether it's a social gathering, a party, a 50th, a wedding, a corporate event, a conference, an AGM, a concert, whatever it might be. This is how we get entertained. We don't have Disneyland and stuff like that to go to, so we spend a lot on socializing, on parties and events. And there's so many indirect people that are attached to it. Think about the caterers that you bring on board, the drinks company that hire waiters to come and attend an event every Saturday, the decorators. There's so many different aspects of the economy that is attached to it. It affects market people, because if a caterer has to cater for a big wedding, she has to go to market to buy ingredients and so on and so forth. So there's such an enormous effect. People always think about it's just the event planner that is affected, but it's not. There's the indirect aspect of it, of the people that provide services to us. So this is something that is going to have a wide-ranging effect, and it's not going to be resolved overnight. I mean, if I look at my company, for example, I think about the fact that I've had to tell my staff to go on unpaid leave. You know how difficult and hard that is? But I've had to make those decisions because I need it to be such that whenever this finishes, because we don't know how long it's going to be, there is some money within the company to continue the company to bring these staff back to work, to get up and running. But I know that even if it finishes by July, it's very possible, because of the type of events we do, I may not work till September. So I'm still going to have to find that money to pay those staff when I bring them back to work in July. And that's affecting lots of companies. We have an association called ILIA, the International Live Events Association, which consists of some of the top event providers in Nigeria. And we've all had to make these decisions.
Now, speaking of money, we were talking earlier about the economic stimulus package that's just been passed in Nigeria, and 1 trillion naira of that is going to be used to support local manufacturing as well as boost import substitution. If we look at your industry, the supply chain from the top down, I can imagine you get quite a lot of your supplies, decor, etc. from China. How, if at all, will this economic stimulus package affect you or assist you in the long term?
That's a very difficult question to answer, because for possibly my company and a few others, we're not going to have the direct effect of this stimulus package, because this money doesn't come to us. It's going to go more to those that are importing, those that actually have to get stuff from China. You have to remember that those are just a small amount of people within the industry. The majority of people are service providers. You know, we provide a service to people that want to do weddings. We arrange the weddings, we arrange the party, the concert. People might have a lot of the equipment already on board if you're providing sound or you're providing light. So that doesn't help us. What we need is direct intervention, you know, access to low interest loans should we need them, short-term loans, deferments if we can get them. Do you understand? What are the things that can have a direct impact? How can we get our staff back to work? If we look at what the United States are doing, they are giving workers X amount of money for the next couple of months. Can our government do that for us? Because that would be great. If I could be able to give my staff back pay for the time that they're unpaid, and I'm sure other organizations would love to do that, that will make a tremendous difference. So I think the government needs to come up with a second package, which is direct benefits to organizations and to the industry like ours.
To actually focus on an industry like your own, definitely this pandemic has highlighted the fact that there's a huge insurance gap in many industries. But for events, for example, when you are able to return to life as normal, business as normal, whenever that will be, how do you think your relationship with insurance will change at that time?
Well, I think what the insurance company have to do is to come up with a package, because imagine how many people had events that were cancelled just as the event was meant to happen. I mean, I know on the weekend that the edict went ahead, there were literally hundreds of events that were cancelled last minute. These, either the client or the event companies had paid for services, which they can't get the money back. That's enormous loss both to the clients and to the event industry. So the insurance industry needs to come up with a package for cancellations, for things like this that may happen in the future, unforeseen circumstances and stuff like that. But would they do it? One of the hardest things that we always found with the insurance industry is they're very quick to take money, but it takes a long time to pay out, if at all.
Very typical. And at times like this, you wonder what kind of buffers you may have in place to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 while waiting for government's intervention. Do you have any kind of buffers in place, and what are they?
Well, this was not something that anybody was expecting. So the buffers, I believe, for the industry generally are not there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been laying off staff. We wouldn't be facing these drastic situations that we're in now. The only buffers that we can have now are to try and plan ahead, to try and be sensible with our spending, to talk to our staff and to let them try and understand the situation we're in, to do everything that we can this coronavirus is over, and of course appeal to the federal government, particularly places like Lagos where the majority of the events, both small, medium and large, take place, to provide some assistance, to provide a stimulus package for the industry, because they've got to remember, as I said earlier, that it's not just about the event planners that are affected, it's the entire service industry, the market women, the people, the transportation companies, all of them are affected by this situation.
And now that Nigerians are beginning to realize that I might not even need an event planner to have a wedding. For example, I may not need a photographer to, take good pictures for my wedding. And what have you? Are you concerned that post? Why does Brexit keep coming to my mind? Post COVID-19, that things may never really, get back to the same for event planners like yours. And are you looking at the next page for your industry?
I'm not really too worried about that, but I do believe that the world generally will change from coronavirus, because as you can see, people are working from home, people are finding new methods of doing things, new ways of doing business. There will be business opportunities from this, which some people will go on and make fortunes from. For our industry, what might happen, it might slim down the industry in that there may not be enough work for everybody. But for instance, if you want to do a concert, to arrange to have a live concert somewhere, people still want to see their artists live. Not everybody wants to watch them on a social media channel. Some people want to go there and see them and feel that vibe live and direct. If you've got a wedding, yes, you might think you can arrange it by yourself, but you try it. And when you realize the headache and the expense, because you don't get the wholesale discounts that event planners can bring to you, it makes a difference. But of course, one of the things that we've been working on is new technology, because things are changing. You have to bring new technology into event planning. Do you understand? So things like this now, we're still having meetings with the clients, but what we're doing is we're using online video conferencing. We're using WhatsApp videos, we're using WhatsApp messages, we're using those kind of social medium or apps to conduct business. So there's business going on, but there's just no money.
And money is a lifeline of any business, small or big. So now, I mean, travel agencies, for example, about 50% drop in sales. And for you personally, how much impact has this had on your business that you can say, look, this is not looking good at all?
When I look at my business, Mahogany, I mean, we are a production company, so we don't do social events. We do like AGMs, big conferences, concerts, those kind of things. For us, it's come to a complete standstill, absolute standstill. I mean, we plan a lot of our events sometimes 6 to 12 months in advance. So all of those that were scheduled to be, we've worked on events from about last year, and they were scheduled to take place in May and June, and I possibly think those in July will not take place. So we've wasted literally 6 to 12 months on events that will not take place, and we tend not to get paid until the actual event takes place. So you can imagine the enormous effect on us, because this is income that we were expecting, this is income that we were hoping to grow the business, to pay salaries, to do other things, to help us with our cash flow and so on and so forth. It's been absolutely, it's using the word dramatic to say the effects on us is, I mean, is a complete understatement. We have come to a complete and utter standstill. And it's not just us, it's so many organizations and event management companies like us that are in the same position.
Right, we'll have to leave it there, except of course to ask if you're already laying off staff, because that is a key concern.
Yet, but we have put staff on unpaid leave.
We'll have to leave it there. Sola Oyebade is CEO, Creative Director of Mahogany.
We are actually, the good news is Mr. Oyebade is not leaving us just yet,
great,
so we're just going to go to a short break, and when we're back, we will continue talking to the Director of Mahogany International, Mr. Sola Oyebade. See you soon. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We are still talking to the CEO and Creative Director of Mahogany International, Mr. Sola Oyebade. Charlotte, I'd like to talk to you about the history of Mahogany International, because I know a few years ago over in the UK, I definitely heard that did it start out as a model agency? Is that what happened with Mahogany International? Could you tell us about the trajectory of your business over time?
We started in 1996, and originally we started as a bridal company. We were one of the first people to ever do the African Caribbean bridal show, because back in those times, there were just no events aimed at black people. There were no events aimed for, if you wanted to do a wedding, how did you find black vendors and suppliers? Then yes, we went on and created Mahogany Models, which is an agency which was set up for models of color. I remember at the time when we set it up, we were accused of being racist because we didn't allow white models to be a part of the agency. Then from there, we came back to Nigeria back in 2012, I believe, and we set up Mahogany Productions and Events, which is a production company. So we do a lot of concerts, like I said, AGMs, big events like GT Bank Fashion Weekend and a few other events like Union Bank Edu 360, Lagos Jazz Series and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's kind of how we've developed. But we also have another company which is attached to it called Fashion's Finest Africa, where we try and promote new and emerging talents such as models, designers, stylists, and we do an awards which is attached to that for the whole of Africa.
Sounds like you've got quite a lot on your plate, or at the very least, pre-COVID-19. Now, if we move away from the subject of coronavirus, because it's something that we're not going to stop talking for at least 2 months, unfortunately, let's focus on your business, Mahogany International, as Femi was talking about there, the way it started, the history and the trajectory. Now, what has been the biggest challenge or setback for you with Mahogany International whilst operating on the shores of Nigeria?
My first challenge was quite interesting, was that I came in with an attitude of, this is how we do it in the UK, and this is how I expect to do it here in Nigeria when I wanted to do business. So I remember my very first event, which I was doing, I think I did it in Abuja, and they told me that I had 3 days to set up. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. 3 days to set up. In the UK, because of the cost of labor and stuff like that, companies literally come in on the day, they set up in a few hours, tear down in a few hours after the event, and that's it. So I thought that, Nigeria was very much like that. So I went to sleep, relaxed in the hotel, came back, I think, on the third day, expecting that everything would be ready, and there was nothing done whatsoever. And my event was 6 hours later. I mean, that gave me the biggest shock of my life. So I kind of realized that in Nigeria, you have to be very much hands-on. You have to be there every single step of the way, which is difficult, because you expect that if I hire a professional, that they will get on and do things as they're expected to do things. The second thing I found, which was very, very challenging, was that here in Nigeria, it seems to be that when somebody gives you a job and they're paying you, they feel they own you. So they can call you anytime, day or night, they can talk to you anyhow they feel they like to, and so on and so forth. So that's been quite challenging. And I think the third thing was, people don't like to pay. I found that very difficult. You agree a price, you do the job, and then afterwards you're struggling to get your balance. And these are things that are still going on across the entire industry.
And really, nobody likes to pay, not anywhere, whether you're in America or wherever. But now, I mean, this is an industry that has a turnover of about ₦1 trillion naira, and about 100 billion added to the national GDP every year. Now, there's a challenge of an all-comers affair, in your industry, where almost, you hear whoever say, I'm an events planner and all of that. Do you self-regulate, and what kind of regulations do you have in place to ensure that you have quality service and you don't have, people who are not up to, par getting into your industry?
Well, I mean, when I first came back, there was no regulation, there was no association. But as time has gone on, things have changed. There's like ILIA, International Live Events Association, which we are a member of. There's also APPION, which is Association of Event Planners. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to self-regulate. Before you can come onto those associations, you have to show that in some cases you have offices, you've got a website, you can be contacted, you follow certain rules and regulations, you cover things like health and safety, you have insurance to cover you against damage to staff and to your customers and so on and so forth. But one of the things that we would really love is that we'd love the government to also get involved, because just like you said, there's a lot of cowboys out there that are doing things the wrong way. I mean, some of you will remember instances where there was a political rally and the stage collapsed. You know, these are all the sort of things that should not be happening in this industry, and that's happened a few times. And that's simply because there is not enough regulation, there's no financial or civil penalties should you breach any health and safeties. There's not enough inspections by the state government and even federal government. So yes, we would love to have more regulation, and I think the industry needs to be streamlined, because like you said, somebody can wake up today having planned their sister's wedding, and the next thing they're an event planner.
Well, Sola, we've looked at the
I'm actually quite
backstory
triggered by
with
that,
you.
because that is literally me.
Femi thinks she's an event planner, apparently. But okay, so we've looked at the history of event planning and Mahogany International in specific with you. We've looked at the present day with the structure of COVID-19 and how it's affecting global economies and small to medium business operators within each country's economy. Now let's look towards the future. A lot of companies are using this as an opportunity to digitize their revenue stream. So if you look even at the event space, let's take something like social media, for example. There is a spate of Instagram live videos happening now.
Yes.
People are constantly dancing.
Parties,
TikTok, Snapchat videos
DJ
are
sets.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's a complete increase in this. And there's also been a surge in new kind of applications or apps whereby people are able to convene simply for the reason of social interaction. For example, the House Party app. How do you intend to digitize Mahogany International? If you have any plans to at all, and if you do not, then what does the future hold for the event space in Nigeria post COVID-19?
A lot of the experts that are out there have been saying very clearly that any company in any industry that does not get into the digital space will be non-existent within the next 5 years. And that's a fact. I mean, for instance, we go for presentations nowadays. You know, if you go in there with a handwritten presentation, nobody's interested. You know, people want to see graphics. They want to see 3D images. You know, they want to see the music playing behind. They want to actually walk around in the event space or whatever it is that you're creating for them. So that's definitely going to be the case. I think that what will happen, and we've started it with Fashion's Finest, for example, whereby we do the live event, we can't cope with the numbers. You know, we just get thousands of people that come for our event. So what we do live streaming so that people can feel the effect of the event in their home. And I'm sure with some of these apps that are coming on board, the experience will be even better. You know, like you said, it might be an experience where people gather in their house and they enjoy the fashion show live from their house. With COVID-19 that happened recently, Paris Fashion Week had to do that. You know, I can't remember which was of the designer that did it, but they did their fashion show with nobody there and stream-lived it around the world. All the celebrities, everyone that wanted to watch it, watched it. They were feeding into the event as it was going and commenting and stuff like that. That could be the new future. That could be the new way to go. There will still be jobs for people like myself because they still need somebody like me to produce it. But how it develops and spreads after that will be completely different. And we are totally going digital. I mean, my team is spending a lot of time now researching, looking at the sort of things that we can do and coming back to me with feedback and recommendations.
And speaking of the service sector, which is what you do predominantly, it looks like that sector is not taken as seriously as it really should, especially on the side of government when it comes to using that sector to tackle the challenges of unemployment. How important is it to take this service sector, you know, to put it on a pedestal that it really belongs to?
I mean, very recently, some very well-known journalists around the world, when they were giving some figures about Nigeria, said that the service industry, or our GDP in Nigeria now, is 50%. You know, whereas a few years back, it was something like 90% on oil and agriculture. Things have changed drastically. So if the government is not waking up to this, they're missing a trick here. There is no doubt that it will keep increasing. Our population is such like that. You know how many people we employ when we do events? We can employ literally hundreds of people at an event, directly and indirectly, like I said, from waiters to caterers, to people that provide drinks, to transportation, to hostesses. You know, there's so many different fields in it, from professionals and non-professionals that are part of an event. And this happens day in, day out. I'm sure you can think about how many weddings or social events you get invited to every single weekend prior to COVID-19. That just gives you an idea. That's just you. Now replicate that across everybody you know. You can imagine what it's like for Nigeria as a whole. Things will, how would I put it? The government needs to understand the service industry and needs to do more to provide to it and for it, because this is where their income is going to come from over the next 10 to 20 years.
Well, Sola, it is the uncertain times, but as we look forward to hopefully COVID-19, the outbreak wrapping up over the next couple of months, what is next for Mahogany International, briefly?
Very briefly, where we've got Fashion's Finest Africa coming up, which is an Africa-wide event which takes place in Lagos. It was meant to take place in May, but at the moment we're postponing because of COVID-19. We're hoping it will take place in July. We've got, when we get into the later part of the year, we've got our big clients that will be coming on board with their big events. Some of them that you know, things like GT Bank Fashion Weekend, Union Bank Edu 360. We've got concerts coming up. We've got AGMs coming up. We've got so much coming up. It's an exciting time for us. I mean, we're not bothered if we can get through this period. The difficulty is to get through this period. And once we get out on the other side, it's going to be an amazing year.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck with
Absolutely.
that. CEO of Mahogany International, Sola Oyebade. Thank you very much for joining us on The Morning Show.